Hi there, everybody. It's 4 o'clock in New York. In the second Trump administration, telling the truth can get you fired. Brand new reporting from the Washington Post, breaking this afternoon, reveals that the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has fired the #1 and #2 officials at the National Intelligence Council, weeks after the council published an assessment that all but demolished Team Trump's legal rationale for mass deportations. From that report, quote, Gabbard removed Michael Collins, the acting chair of the National Intelligence Council, as well as his deputy, Maria Langdon-Ryckoff. That's according to a spokesperson for Gabbard's office. The firings took place 1 week after the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a partially declassified intelligence assessment dated April 7th and produced by the National Intelligence Council. That assessment found that the Venezuelan government is most likely not directing the activities of the gang known as Tren de Aragua or facilitating its operations in the U.S. A reminder, this assessment said this, quote, while Venezuela's permissive environment enables TDA, Tren de Aragua, to operate, the Maduro regime probably does not have a policy of cooperating with TDA and is not directing TDA movement to and operations in the U.S. Statements like that are very inconvenient for the Trump administration. In invoking the Alien Enemies Act on March 15th, the Trump administration said in an executive order this, quote, TDA is undertaking hostile actions and conducting irregular warfare against the territory of the U.S., both directly and at the direction, clandestine or otherwise, of the Maduro regime in Venezuela. That was the entire justification for using the Alien Enemies Act in the first place. The Alien Enemies Act was used only 3 times in American history, and the Trump administration is using it to deport migrants without any semblance of due process being given to them and then sending them to a notorious prison in El Salvador. With their justification for using the AEA, Alien Enemies Act, blown to smithereens by their own government, the Trump administration, instead of backing down on the deportations, has instead started to crack down on the fact finders and the truth tellers in their own intelligence community. The New York Times reported last week that in the wake of its own reporting on an initial assessment back in February, quote, the Justice Department opened a criminal investigation and portrayed the reporting as misleading and harmful. The administration doubled down a month later after similar coverage in the Washington Post, citing the disclosures in both articles as a reason to relax limits on leak investigations. Now, the firing of the #1 and #2 officials at the National Intelligence Council sends an unmistakable message. The ranking member of the House Intel Committee, Congressman Jim Himes, tells the Washington Post this, quote, absent evidence to justify the firings, the workforce can only conclude that their jobs are contingent on producing analysis that is aligned with the president's agenda, rather than truthful and apolitical, end quote. It's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Washington Post national investigative reporter Carol Leonnig is here. Also joining us is former CIA director, now MSNBC senior national security analyst John Brennan. Director Brennan, I'm actually going to start with you because I believe you know these officials. Let me just tell our viewers a little bit about the folks who have been fired, purged from the federal government. Collins has spent 3 decades in the intelligence community, has served as chief of staff for the CIA's deputy director, starting his career as an analyst focused on East Asia. Langdon-Ryckoff has also served more than 30 years, has more than 30 years experience in the intelligence community, including as an expert on the Middle East. The ODNI previously listed her as an exceptional analyst. She also previously served as director of the Strategic Futures Group at the National Intelligence Council. Seasoned, apolitical, proven, trusted intelligence officials fired today by Tulsi Gabbard. Director Brennan.
Yeah, this whole thing just makes me livid. It's appalling and outrageous and demonstrates why Tulsi Gabbard never should have been confirmed as Director of National Intelligence. Michael Collins and Marie Langdon-Ryckoff are 2 of the most experienced, accomplished, and talented analysts in the entire U.S. intelligence community. With over 60 years of combined experience, they have worked for successive administrations since the 1990s. They have demonstrated time and time again their capabilities, their competence, their integrity, and they have served as role models for a generation of intelligence officers inside of CIA. They're CIA officers by background and by training. And this is going to have real reverberations within the workforce because, as Congressman Hines pointed out, it's clearly a signal to tell analysts throughout the intelligence community, you tell the truth, you provide objective analysis as you're supposed to be doing, you are running the risk of getting fired. And Michael and Maria are really the quintessential analysts that you want to have providing insight and information and analysis to policymakers so they make the right decisions for U.S. policymakers. But this is a very tangible example of such dangerous and insidious corruption within the Trump administration. They are now manipulating the instruments of government that are used to keep this country safe. And again, the sacking of these two individuals, the very competent and capable officers who have been revered by a generation of intelligence analysts within the agency and across the community because of their accomplishments. This again sends a very clear and chilling signal to others that this is a new day. And if you're going to carry out your responsibilities professionally, with competence and with integrity, you are going to be in the crosshairs of this administration. Absolutely appalling.
Director Brennan, I wonder if you can pull the curtain back a little bit for me on the conversations happening among former intelligence officials, because I know in the transition from my own reporting that there was grave concern about the folks that had been anywhere near any collection or analysis around Putin and Russia going back to the first Trump term and through the Biden years. But what these firings exhibit is that if the intelligence community isn't complicit in manufacturing rationales for invoking the Alien Enemies Act, which is something that is now snarled up in the courts, and the intelligence products are likely to be used as evidence to fight the invoking of the Alien Enemies Act. I mean, facts are facts. And where the Trump administration is running into the wall of facts really isn't in Congress, where the Republicans don't seem to care. It isn't among their base, which so far hasn't rejected Donald Trump. And it isn't anywhere that we can see other than when they are in court. And I wonder what it portends that two senior intelligence officials have been fired because the intelligence product didn't support a false rationale for invoking the Alien Enemies Act.
It portends real danger. Intelligence professionals, both those currently serving and those who served and are retired, were very concerned about the selections for individuals at the top of the intelligence community and across the government. But we had great confidence that the intelligence professionals would fulfill their responsibilities to make sure that they told truth to power. But now with this action, it demonstrates that those at the top of the intelligence community can terminate individuals. We have already seen it at CIA in terms of the termination of individuals who are working on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Even though they may have been reassigned to other positions, they are being terminated. They are being condemned. And so it shows that people like Tulsi Gabbard, John Ratcliffe, and others can really take actions that's going to undermine the capabilities and the integrity of that intelligence community. And so this is something that I think we're all very worried about. And it also, again, I think it reflects the sense that's coming from the White House that people have to get in line, that there's a sense that there needs to be fealty to Donald Trump. And if you're not going to genuflect at his altar, you're going to see the door. And when it starts hitting the intelligence community, the law enforcement community, the diplomatic community, and the U.S. military, I think we're really in for a very, very dangerous time.